Everybody, welcome back to Enheartened. This is the episode that I've been waiting all year to share with you, to record, to put out there. And this episode has to do with my new book, Scars of Gold, and also a core theme at the heart of it that I think you would deeply benefit from. It has to do with reconciling with the shadow and what does that look like practically. But before getting even there, I want to take a minute to bring you into this journey that it has been to devote myself to writing, which I never saw myself doing. I cannot tell that I ever saw myself becoming a writer, even though writing, weirdly enough, has always been a big part of my life. You've heard me have many guests on this podcast, and I've asked them this question that I always ask, which is, what is your scar of gold? Meaning, what is the wound that you went through that turned out to turn into a scar of gold? And I want to take a minute to even dive into the specific kind of wounds that want to turn into into scars of gold. This podcast will probably go in multiple directions, so I'm inviting you to grab a cup of tea because we're gonna dive in as deep as I can possibly go here. First, the idea of the book. Where did it come from? The Kintsugi practice has been a big part of my life. The Japanese practice that has to do with fixing broken vases with gold and the symbolism of that. It has been a big part of my life because there's a part of me that refused to buy into the theory of brokenness, that somebody can get broken beyond repair. And I know for some people it might be very, very hard to hear, but there was just a part of me that rebelled at the core of my being against that thought form. You might say it is I don't know, the alchemist in me, the healer in me. But that idea never really sat well with me. I kind of refused to capitulate to the thought form. So it has been a big part of my life. And the, the, the realization of the title of the book came pretty spontaneously to me because even that, the title has been a journey. The thought form of writing a book got seeded very strongly in 2020, and back then it was a pivotal moment planetarily, but personally for me it was a pivotal moment because it was almost like ending a cycle. And back then the book I wanted to write about was going to be called I Wish I Failed Them Sooner. And who is them? You know, it is family of origin, culture of origin, conditioning of origin, and all these different things that made me feel like an outcast when I chose a different path in my life. You know, it was a dark night, and on the other side, there was again this emergence, a weird emergence when you surrender to the dark night. We often think we find our way out of the dark night, whereas the dark night is actually processing us. I like to think of the dark night as a master teacher. So initially that was the thought form, and then it shifted, it evolved into something else. The title became The Dark Night of the Ego, not The Dark Night of the Soul, because I don't believe that the soul has a dark night. I understand the process of the dark night of the soul the way it is described, but the terminology for me doesn't sit well because to me the soul is the godlike essence of divinity within you. So that part of you doesn't know a dark night. Actually, when you have your moments of massive breakdown, these are the moments where your soul, for the first time, is allowed to go through the cracks, to reach your conscious awareness, so that you can begin a process of transformation. So, the dark night of the soul never really made sense to me, but the dark night of the ego did. And that is something that I wanted to write about back then. And then I soon realized that no, this too was not going to be the title of the book, and the title shifted. It's only in 2023 I had an acquisition editor from Hay House who reached out to write a book that to write a book project that when I decided to sit with it in 2023 the title of the book actually came. But the really interesting part was between 2020 when the idea of writing came and 2023 when I really committed seriously to the process of writing a book, there was this kind of divine frustration that I was dealing with. And the divine frustration has to do with all the ways we beat ourselves up when we don't do the things that we set ourselves to do. I think if you're a writer listening to this, you know what I'm talking about. When you have projects that get dragged out, a book that you've been writing for years or maybe even decades. I've heard that from some writers. Um, there's a little bit of that frustration, your spiritualized inner critic that starts beating you up from the inside, saying, oh, you're not following through and all of that. And I realized that the phase, from 2020 to 2023, where um, the idea was maturing, deepening its roots within me. What was going on is the book itself was rewriting me. It needed to rewrite me before I was able to write it. And that phase was actually very sacred. And during that time, I did something that was actually a part of the rewriting process and a part of embracing the identity of the writer. And this is a method that I sometimes teach to people who are going through the journey of reclaiming their golden shadow, which is the light they keep in the dark. There needs to be a form of devotional practice that allows you to embrace the archetypes, the traits that constitute that golden shadow, that light that you want to bring to the world. I'm going to ground it with an example. Let's say in my case, I wanted to write a book, but I didn't see myself as an author. The imposter thought forms were so deep. And yet I was already out there. I was serving, I was facilitating for years. I was on social media, but I wasn't really addressing the things that were really meaningful to me, the things that I would have wanted to put in a book. The idea is that sometimes some people are, I don't know, they find a little weird. Like, I see the shadow as ultimately benevolent, which is a thought form that some people push against. But I'm like, why can't you see the beautiful benevolence of the shadow? Which is what we call the storehouse of all the aspects of ourselves that we push in the dark. So I decided my devotional practice will be every day I'm going to write about it and put out there on social media. All these thoughts that I wanted to include in a book, I'm going to put them out there. I'm going to quote unquote self-publish, but it's not going to be a book. It's only going to be my Instagram page. But people can already begin to get in touch with these ideas, and as I write them, I'm going to refine them and see receiving the feedback from people. I'm going to learn. I'm going to engage that thing inside of me. I started writing the book out loud, and in that short interval of time, um, basically from 2021 to 2023, I've had a total. When Hay House reached out, it was the third or fourth editor that had reached out with the idea of writing a book together. Where I'm going with that is when you decide to engage something within you that was repressed, the world around you begins to feel it. It really begins to feel it. So in 2023, the idea of the book got anchored and it became Scars of Gold. So, by the way, if you haven't pre-ordered the book yet, my invitation, this is a shameless plug. I'm inviting you to go order the book. Check the link, scarsofgold.com. I have a massive amount of pre-order bonuses that I'm creating, that I'm putting out there, because I want this book to be not just a book, this is an immersion. So I've created a Scars of Gold immersion for you. And basically, there are three workshop series. There's a workshop series in three parts. The first part, it's called, the workshop series is called Reconciling with the Shadow. But the first part has to do with, resolving our core fears and emotional shadows. That's what the first part is about. And this workshop is happening Sunday, August 31st at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, and that is live. We're gonna go live. I'm gonna be there with you. It's only available to those who pre-order. It doesn't matter where you pre-order. Whether it's Amazon, if you go to Amazon, it gotta be country specific to your region, or all the other links where you can find the book, or Spotify, Audible. It doesn't matter. It's available everywhere. Then you go on the website, scarsofgold.com, you enter your details, you let us know, you put your order number over there, and then you get access to this immersive experience. So, for the next 3 Sundays, we are going to dive in deep and begin to anchor the themes of the book. So, this Sunday, the 31st August, we work on emotional shadows and our core fears, beginning to reclaim the vitality that gets suppressed by these. And the Sunday after that, we work on our shadows of origin, how I like to call them. Mother shadows, father shadows, parental shadows, if you wish. And these are the aspects of ourselves that we turn off because of the relationships that we had with our caregivers or the lack thereof. And we need to reclaim them because they echo massively throughout the rest of our lives. And now the third one we're going to be exploring are the shadows that show up in love and connection, relational shadows. That too is important to explore. But you can only fully dive into relational shadows if you've done if you are able to meet your pain. That's why the part one is necessary. Two, if you're able to reclaim the aspects of yourself that you shut down in relationship to your caregivers, and then it gets easier to do relational work to fully reclaim that. So it's a three-part series, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Something that you're gonna have immediate access to. It's the Golden Shadow Journal. Because to me, I dislike when people portray working with the shadow just like ruminating pain, going through pain, and yes, it is. There is some of that. There's a great deal of that. You get to meet your own shame, your repressed aspects, and the pain you didn't know how to resolve, your inner conflicts. But it is way more. It is so much more than that. You also get to reclaim the light and the power that your shadow has been guarding, because ultimately that's what excites me. The whole point of the book wasn't just like, oh, you're gonna see your wounding and meet your pain and all of these different things, which are also potent, but there's a brightness that is in there, the gold in the dark. That's what is also compelling. So the Golden Shadow Journal serves that. And then there is also going to be there's a Golden Shadow integration journey that I created just for you. You have immediate access to that. It's called Radiant Return, and that is very potent if you've gone through the Golden Shadow Journal. But something that is also coming after that, which is from September 16th to the 22nd, there's a 7-day challenge that I will be running that has to do with that golden shadow. Because to me, the golden shadow is also the big promise within shadow integration, meaning reclaiming the gifts you repressed in the dark. So we're going to have a 7-day challenge where you get guided through this. And I know it sounds like a lot, and it is. But this is work that is really meaningful to my heart. And I decided for this launch, I wasn't going to hold back. I was going to give. That's my intention. I intend to give. I intend for this to be an immersion. I intend for this to be integration extravaganza, if you wish. And probably you can feel the passion in my heart as I'm talking about this, but yeah, it really gets me fired up. It really gets me excited. So this is a little bit of the thought form behind the book. I want to mention something around what I really call the sacred wounds that turns into scars of gold. Because not all wounds turn into scars of gold. There are some wounds that will barely be remembered. You know, some wounds, they will heal without leaving a trace. There's a little poem that I shared about it, and I'll try to see if I can remember the whole poem right now. I shared it on my Instagram. It goes like this. There are some wounds that heal without leaving a trace. Just like a paper cut, they will barely be remembered. But there's a specific kind of inner fractures that don't just want to heal. They are master teachers. They want to initiate you to your power, and they want to reveal your true nature. And these wounds, they seem to have a mind of their own because they will demand that you journey into your shadow more than once. And these wounds are the echo of aspects of yourself that you thought life would be easier without, and yet burying them planted the seeds of suffering. And these seeds, they eventually sprouted into a life that doesn't feel like your own. And these wounds, these inner fractures, they are sacred, but they are also relentless. And if you come close enough, they are constantly screaming, let us stretch your heart. And when you do, you don't just heal, but you also reclaim the light, the radiance, the power that they had been guarding. And then the wounds turn into scars of gold as a reminder that this is where you found your light. So, this book is ready for these seminal wounds that create a fragmentation at the core of your psyche, you know? And when you reclaim the invitation there, when you embrace the initiation, it's as if your heart stretches, your heart expands, and you fall more in love with being human, and through that process, you refine your ability to express your brightness. So that's the backstory of Scars of Gold. Now, what I would love to lean into is what does that look like to reconcile with your darkness or with your shadow? Why I think that is central. Usually, when people begin the practice of shadow work, shadow integration, and reclaiming the aspects of themselves that they repressed, we often create this adversarial relationship with the shadow, where we see it as, oh, this is the thing that is fucking up my life. This is the thing that is making my life a little harder. This is the thing responsible for self sabotage. This is the thing responsible for the resistance that I'm experiencing. For the fact that I am not allowing myself to receive love in relationships. For the fact that I'm triggered. For the fact that I am not able to soften my heart, to really connect. For the fact that intimacy scares me. For the fact that I am not allowing my gifts to be expressed. So, the shadow basically become the shadow becomes the perfect scapegoat. That's what I see all the time. And usually what do we do when we have identified the culprit? This, the thing responsible for all your problems. We want to wrestle it down to the ground. We just want to amputate it. We want to clear it. We want to get rid of it. And usually what I see people having is a form of, like, I don't know if this is a word, but I'm gonna make it up. A shadow titus, you know, if you wish. Some form of like inflammation where they just like trying to get rid of the shadow, which is not realizing that it is seeding the same paradigm of separation and divide, meaning I see something that I consider to be problematic within me and immediately I want to amputate it. I think if people could, the same way allopathic medicine works, which is it is not very holistic, you know? Pay attention to when people have some form of ailment. Instead of sometimes addressing the root cause, if a surgeon can just amputate, cut off the part, go in and cut it off. That's usually what we are conditioned to do. It doesn't work with the psyche. The psyche doesn't want to work like that. The model is different. The model of healing is really different. So at the core, if you are going to do, I want to say, rigorous shadow work, the thought form needs to be to reconcile with the shadow instead of trying to kill it. So the question needs to be, what does it look like for me to have the most appropriate relationship to the shadow? What does it even look like for me to have an appropriate relationship with my own darkness? Am I willing to invite it into the light? Or do I want to like be seen as so holy that everything that may make me be seen as less than holy to the external world, I want nothing to do with it. I see that especially in people who want to be very good. You know, when people want to be so good, like such good people, that anything that they perceive as dysfunctional within themselves, they don't want to have a relationship with to it. There is that tendency to want to repress everything that is seen as not good, their dysfunction, or the traits that are not so um, nice or virtuous or morally integrous. So there's a divine humbling there, because I think one of the pitfalls that many spiritual seekers have, it is to put themselves above darkness. And by darkness, I am meaning all the different versions of darkness. Whether it's just things that you have repressed, but also the capacity to commit some really atrocious acts. There is this kind of holier than thou mentality that we kind of need to take down if we are to really meet ourselves and look at our own shortcomings and to do an honest self-evaluation. Because if we are not willing to do that, there is very little integrity to how we meet ourselves. We're going to find a way to distort what we perceive, what we sense. You're going to find a way to be dishonest with yourself if you're not willing to, to acknowledge that sometimes you actually want to hurt in your relationships. You want to stab back, you know? You want to say something that you know will affect the pain body, the emotional body of somebody. That sometimes you might see somebody experiencing the level of like some form of success that you don't see as possible for you, and that you feel envy, that you might even feel jealousy, that you might even feel a form of they call it in German, and I'm going to be butchering it. Schadenfreude, is that how it's called? Which is basically wanting the other person to fail or to fall on their face. These are things that are real. Or that you might be not as emotionally mature as you think you are. I mean, if there's something that parenthood showed me, I became a dad for the first time in 2019. It's been 6 years now, and between 2019 and 2021, each year we had a kid. So in 2021, I was a dad of three, and if you think you're emotionally so mature, intelligent, just have a few kids that are as rambunctious as it comes. They're gonna show you your incongruences within. So life wants to humble you, but it's not a humility that is inviting you to reject your brightness. It is just a humility that wants you to be fully in contact, in touch with the ground. Not buried under the ground, but really in touch with it. So the question is, what is your relationship with your own darkness? What is your relationship with your shadow? What is your relationship with your own human shortcomings? What is your relationship with your moral superiority? Ideological superiority? Spiritual superiority? What is your relationship with your own narcissism? Or you might say, oh, I don't have any form of narcissism. What are you talking about? I'm not saying you're a narcissist. What I'm saying, if we look deeply enough, there might be some areas of your life where you are so self-righteous that it is flirting with a form of narcissism. We all have some of that. And the most loving people are the ones who have a healthy relationship with their own darkness or capacity for darkness or with their own shadow. That's the first foundation. The more you're willing to have that humble, open, curious relationship with your shadow, the more open you are, the more discerning you are, the less you put yourself on any form of pedestal. And we can create a pedestal out of anything. We can even create a pedestal out of feeling like the victim. So it is so important to ask yourself, what is your relationship with your own shadow? Because the thing is, we have so many hidden benefits that are coming from our shadow attachments. And those hidden benefits are the ways we get some needs met through using shadow material, because we do not trust that we can meet these needs in a very straightforward, direct way. We learn so many adaptation where we are sourcing from our sneaky ways of getting what we want, our sneaky ways of getting what we need to kind of survive. So it also needs to be shameless in the way we lean in there. So the first chapter of Scars of Gold, the first part of Scars of Gold has to do with the call of the shadow. Because if you say, I want to heal, if you say, I want to express my purpose, I want to be visible, I want to bring my work to the world, I want to have healthier relationships, I want to not be so triggered this much, or I want to shift my life in a way that feels scary, guess what happens usually? Usually it's the answer that it's the shadow that answers and says, here is what you need to love within yourself so that you can receive what you want. Here is what you need to love within yourself to meet with love so that you can morph into the person who can actually experience what you've prayed for. And this is something that I've had to experience so many times. So many times. The level of devotion that I've had to harness to, we are a homeschooling family. Our kids are homeschooled, so we have them around us a big part of the time. And I'm not even the one that is doing the homeschooling. My partner Renee, she's doing the homeschooling most of the time, and I mean all of the time, basically. So that means we in this setup, the level of devotion, working from home, the kids are there, all my ways to make life comfortable for myself, needing to challenge them, to create space, to lean into the book, to engage the teachings. There is a shaping mechanism that has to happen that will require that you meet your shadow a lot, that you engage your resistance a lot. So the first chapter of the book has to do with that, which is reconciling with your own darkness, your capacity for darkness. And the second part has to do with self-abandonment, the second chapter, which is the beginning of the divide. This is how we adapt. It's our main mechanism of adaptation to a life that was not designed to welcome our fullness. It's our main mechanism of adaptation to, I want to say, a culture that was built on fragmentation. Fragmentation is the way we have evolved. We separate things, we divide things. And I'm not saying this is always negative, because fragmentation is also how we make sense of the parts. Think about your psyche through your process of evolution as this mad scientist as well, trying to make sense of the human psyche as you evolve. I often like to say, maybe even your soul is learning from you, and through your fractures, maybe your soul is gathering intel into how you heal from that, into what it looks like for a human to summon love. Because this is really what it takes to integrate and to heal. You have to summon love and consciously apply love. The kind of loving yourself that you think you are experiencing when you feel good about yourself, when everything is going all right, that's not really love in action. That's some form of contentment that you're experiencing. Things are going well, good. all systems at ease because there's no alarm bell ringing. That's great. There's ease, there is beauty, there's even joy in there. That's fantastic. But love in action happens when you summon love to the places where that love was scarce within yourself. That is the dissension, meaning you're inviting light to the places where light was missing, love to the places where love was missing. So, this is the dissolving of self abandonment, where you begin a conscious relationship with the parts of you that you were conditioned to see as unlovable. And you gotta lean in there. In the book, I offer so many prompts. To be quite honest, and that's a little anecdote that I have around the process of writing the book that I love so much. Usually I am a fan of thorough work. And when I started writing the book, there are so many processes, so many prompts in there, and so many somatic inquiries in there that I offered. And for every single thing, I was designing this journey. I was basically putting myself in I have thousands of facilitations under my belt, coaching people through the processes, through the journeys of integration. And I was just like, okay, I am dealing with a person that is working with this specific kind of repression and blah, blah, blah. What is the prompting that I'm going to offer them? And I would, in my head, I was just planning this journey with, let's say, 25 prompts for each exercise. And the book was just loaded with these processes. And the first draft that I sent to my editor, Sally, she read through all of that. She was like, oh my God, holy shit. Like, all this stuff. Like, if people are gonna go through all these prompts, you know, maybe they're not even gonna be able to it's gonna take them years to finish the book because of all the journeys and all the prompts. And she was like, okay, we gotta lighten this up a little bit. Anyways, in the book, there are and me loving the being thorough in the best of my ability, I still included as many prompts as I could there, as many practices, as many somatic inquiries in the book that I hope you're gonna love. So again, if you haven't pre-ordered yet, I'm inviting you to go and pre-order. First, because if you plan on having the book anyways, well, it helps the success of the book. And I would be really grateful if you were to do that. But going back to my train of thought, all these inquiries and processes, what they do, they really allow you to summon presence in the places within where love had been missing. And that is really what creates that integration. That is really what allows you to dissolve self-abandonment. I like to think of self-abandonment as, and this is going to be a little bit of religious language, but it has nothing to do with religion. To me, that is the original sin. And again, I take it out of religious connotation. To me, that's really the original sin. Because in order to be human, we quote unquote abandon the bigger aspect of soul. If you believe that we come from source and that to take human shape, we disown a part of the soul's awareness to be here. So there's a form of self-abandonment there. And when you begin the journey of being human and you get civilized and you get raised in your childhood, there's also that journey of unconscious self-abandonment that happens. So self-abandonment is core to everything. It's the original sin. It's the original adaptation mechanism. And then we learn to unlearn it, which is really the journey of a lifetime. And the third part, the third chapter of the first part, I'm not going to tell you all about all the chapters of the book quite yet. Maybe we're going to do that in future episodes. Well, that has to do with fragmentation, which is basically the fracture at the core of the psyche. That's the fractures that, in my experience, create suffering. Because basically fragmentation is, I am going to reject what I cannot really suppress. I can only push it away. But it's like I'm gonna invest so much life force into shutting down an aspect of myself, but it's not really shut down. It's still there. Deep down, I know it's still there. That aspect of my psyche, it screams at night. Sometimes I have a hard time sleeping because my system has a sensation of unrest. Why? Because there are aspects of you that need your attention. Sometimes you have a hard time, I don't know, thinking clearly, or you feel this resistance, heaviness within yourself because there's an aspect of you that is screaming, I will not be unheard. I will not be unheard. We spend so much time trying to no longer hear aspects of ourselves that just crave to be invited back into our lives in the most harmonious way possible. And that's a huge part of the journey. That's a huge part of the work. So, chapter 3 of the book, the book only has 9 chapters. I say only as if it's not a lot. Well, it has 9 chapters. In each part, I think it has three chapters, 3 parts, 3 chapters each. I like that number because the 9 gives me, the number of completion, which I liked. So yeah, the tree as well. I'm a little bit of a numerology junkie, so I wanted to work with the energy of the tree as a catalytic energy. I see it as an alchemical number as well. So chapter 3 of the first part is about this fragmentation and how to lean in there to resolve it. So I will go back to the first intention here. The purpose is to build a healthy relationship with your shadow. Your shadow, I like to see it as the dark face of your higher self. To me, it is not something that needs to be fought. Excuse me. It is not something that needs to be, wrestled down to the ground. It is not something that is out to get you, it is out to awaken you. It is an ally, it is a guide in disguise. It really craves to have a harmonious relationship with you. And I mentioned something about how benevolent the shadow is. And as I'm saying this and I'm recording this, I may sneeze a couple times, but that's okay. I'll leave a note here for my producer, Bren. You don't need to edit out all the sneezes. I want the journey to be as authentic as possible. And this is a wink to all the creatives that are in this community. We are human beings. That means the process of creation is sometimes very imperfect, and I want to save it. I really want to keep it that way. So, Bren, when you listen to this, please keep it in. But one thing that I really want to anchor this episode is the benevolence of the shadow. How do I see that benevolence? Just think about it for a second, a hot second. There's this storehouse, if you call it that way. This is the Carl Jung way of looking at the shadow, which is the storehouse of the aspects of yourself that you've been conditioned to see as unlovable, that you've been conditioned to dislike, that wish you didn't have to portray to the world. And pay attention. This part of you has constantly been saying, I will hold it for you. Oh, do you don't like this about you? I will hold it for you. You don't like this other aspect? I will hold it for you. You have a hard time dealing with this pain? I will hold it for you. You have a hard time navigating this heartbreak? I will hold it for you. You have a hard time resolving this wound? I will hold it for you. And I will help you adapt. You have a hard time meeting these needs very consciously? I'll find a way for you to get your needs met. It's only just going to be a little different though. But I'll help you there. I don't know how you call this if not benevolence. I really don't know if this is not a form of benevolence. To me, it is benevolence on steroids. when you're willing to look at the shadow in the right way. So when the shadow flares up with your triggers, when it flares up with some of the pain emerging back to the surface, when it flares up because of anything else, there is really a benevolent design there if you're really willing to see it. And the benevolent design has to do with, can you allow yourself to fully meet the parts of you that were deprived of love, but mostly deprived of your own love? That is benevolence. And that is what I would love to anchor here. So, where do we go with that? I really just want to again invite you to, if you haven't pre-ordered yet Scars of Gold, I'm so grateful first, let me say, to everybody whose voice has supported this journey, everybody who helped in the creation of this, especially the team at Hay House. They've been amazing. And I can't be more grateful. But also, everybody who's ever worked with me. Your voice, your insights, your willingness to open has shaped profoundly the writer in me. So if you haven't pre-ordered Scars of Gold, then I'm inviting you to do it. And I'm inviting you to join me live for the pre-publication date immersion, the Reconciling with Your Shadow 3-part series, because we're gonna dive in deeper. It's not gonna be some form of like lame, superficial calls, because I get bored, and when I get bored, I suck at facilitating, and I don't like it. So we're probably gonna get deeper than you expect, for something that is quote unquote virtually free, because you get it when you get a copy of the book. So yeah, the book really is the cherry on the cake. But the real cake is the whole experience that has been designed around Scars of Gold. And I'm inviting you to lean in there. The other thing that I want to share with you, really in the spirit of maybe being fully transparent with the journey of putting this book out there, I sat a lot with the thought of like, I am traditionally with my business, I was born and raised in African Cameroon. So I don't have it imprinted in me so much the American Western way of like selling something. And here I am. I'm like, I wrote a book, and it's like there's a specific energetics that you need to access to really sell the book, And I'm using the word sell on purpose, because if you're an artist of any kind and an entrepreneur of any kind, you created something, you put your heart and soul in there. Call it however you want to call it. You can spiritually code it with terms like energetic exchange and whatever, but fuck it, you are selling something. You're selling something. And that's okay. So I was sitting with this kind of conflict, which is, I'm aware of all that it takes to make a book successful. First, you need to have a good book. And that's on me. You need to really sit down and pour your heart into it, which I believe I did the very freaking best I could to pour my heart into Scars of Gold. And then the next step is, you can have gold, and if no one knows that there is gold in there, no one's gonna care. No one is gonna care. And, I didn't want Scars of Gold to be a best kept secret. So I was sitting with my natural kind of like reservations, with just like, this is the best thing in the world, you should have it energy, kind of like car dealer energy. It's like, this is the best thing in the world, you should have 10,000 copies just for yourself, and blah blah blah. And the other energy of like, not really giving to the book the chance it deserves, not really giving to your work the kind of chance it deserves to reach the hearts it needs to reach. And I've done some exploration around it. And one thing that came up was the vulnerability that comes with this kind of work. You infuse your soul into a book, and it feels like you're offering your naked heart to the world and building the capacity to let that be okay. Which is somebody can look at this book and read the book and be like, this is the most glorious piece of garbage that I've ever laid my eyes on, and fuck, I can't even read the first 3 pages. Can that be okay for me? I have to let it be okay. Like, and this is also possible that for some people, it might be just what they needed to read in the specific way I laid down the words for them to claim an experience that truly liberates them. Could that also be okay for me? Can I embrace that? And that too was a question to ponder. And it has been somewhat not just challenging, but also liberating to explore that. So that's I the reason why I'm sharing this is for if you are an artist of any kind and you're creator of any kind, you are offering anything of any kind, whether it's like even at your job, sharing an idea that is really meaningful to you with the people at a meeting, that's one of some of the best gifts to the world that you'll ever be able to offer, regardless of how it's received. And doing honest shadow integration allows you to claim that emotional capacity. And that too is a gift from Scars of Gold that I want to offer to you. So, if you haven't ordered your copy yet, go ahead and do that. Join me this Sunday for the first part of our 3-part series of workshops. This Sunday, we're going to be working on resolving core fears and addressing your emotional shadows. And it's really about expanding your emotional range. To live more fully, to reclaim your aliveness, you need to expand your emotional range. And that's a big part of Scars of Gold. So it is with huge gratitude, reverence that I am grateful if you listen to this entire conversation. If you have already ordered your copy of Scars of Gold, a big, massive, huge thank you to you. And I will see you soon on our next episode of Enheartened.